Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We're back. I hope you had a great weekend. First on the docket, Nick Reiner. Can I just say it? He's not going to be competent to proceed. Emmy-winning actor Timothy Busfield submits audio evidence denying child abuse allegations. And as of right now, the hearing is still going on as to see whether he's going to get released. A Bexar County judge has granted a continuance in the murder trial of Brad Simpson. A Michigan woman has been sentenced to prison for killing her son. A North Carolina police have charged a woman with murder spanning nearly 2 decades for poisoning cases. We've got This Day in Legal History, our quote of the day, and our dumb criminal. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, hit that little bell for notifications, and yes, make sure you check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get started, let me remind you to go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service today. When you do, you'll be able to do as many background searches on anyone in the United States that you desire. The report is literally prepared while you wait. It is emailed to you, and you can even get updates sent to you if new information comes up because it's constantly checking for you for new information. That report is going to include all the basic information, where people were born, how old they are, who are their relatives. You're going to be able to find out social media presence, email addresses, phone numbers, criminal history, debts. Are they, have they filed for bankruptcy, married, divorce, criminal history, obviously big, and are they on a sex offender registry? Go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up today. You're going to be happy that you did. Heck, it could save your life. And if you're dating somebody and not using it, you're committing dating malpractice. Just something to think about. All right, let's go ahead and open the record for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. And first on the docket, can I just say it? I'm going to say it. The Reiner case, it's going nowhere fast, okay? Based upon what we're learning, we knew he had mental health issues, but there's going to be a motion for competency filed by the next court date. So obviously those know that the tragic death of Hollywood director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle continue to unfold in the Los Angeles legal system, with their son Nick Reiner facing serious charges for murder. On December 14th, the couple were discovered fatally stabbed in their master bedroom of their Brentwood residence, obviously an affluent neighborhood there in Los Angeles. And their daughter, Romy Reiner, who lives nearby, reportedly found the scene after a massage therapist scheduled for an appointment was unable to gain entry and contacted her. Emergency responders confirmed the victims' identities and determined the deaths resulted from multiple sharp force injuries, classifying the incident as a homicide. Needless to say, the Los Angeles police promptly identified and tracked down Nick Reiner, who they believe is responsible for the deaths, and he was arrested later that evening in the Exposition Park area near the University of Southern California without any resistance. Now, police utilized geo-tracking, cell phone data, and surveillance footage to locate him, and the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office subsequently charged Nick Reiner with 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with special circumstances for multiple murders and the use of a dangerous weapon, to wit, a knife. If convicted, he could face life imprisonment as well as the potential of a death penalty, though we all know that's not going to happen in this particular case. Now, the Reiners had 3 children, Jake, Nick, and Romy. Nick Reiner has a documented history of substance abuse, including methamphetamine use, which he publicly disclosed in interviews and contributed to a film inspired by his experiences in life. Now, sources indicate he was diagnosed with schizophrenia disorder, combined elements of schizophrenia and mood disorder, and has undergone multiple rehabilitation programs. Well, recent reports state that Nick Reiner's current condition in custody can only be described as severely impaired. Insiders characterize him as almost childlike and delirious, reportedly unable to fully process the consequences of the alleged acts or his present circumstances, despite being aware of what obviously has taken place. Now, it's noted that Nick is presently deemed not competent to stand trial. As you may recall, he wasn't cleared to go to court early on, hence the reason why there's some early continuances of the arraignment. So obviously, with suggestions that he's not competent, plus the recent change in his schizophrenia-related medications prompted by complications of side effects like drugs, may have contributed to a significant deterioration in his mental state. Now, obviously, this incident exhibited extreme brutality, consistent with accounts of intense drug-influenced episodes, and though official confirmation of direct meth rage links remain speculative at this point. Anyway, Nick Reiner appeared in court shortly after the charges wearing a suicide prevention garment, and his initial arraignment has previously been postponed. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, if he is in this childlike state, doesn't appreciate what's going on, the attorney, the public defender now, is going to be filing a motion for competency evaluation, basically saying he does not appreciate or understand what's going on here. And even if he can kind of explain, hey, this is what I'm charged with, he cannot assist his defense counsel in his defense. And that's one of the prongs for competency, is you have to be able to assist your defense counsel in doing so. And if he is unable to do so, file that motion. Gives you time not only for the evaluation, but it also gives you time to explore the not guilty by insanity defense that would certainly come if he is ever restored to competency. It's going to be an interesting case, but this case is going nowhere fast. And my guess is, get the popcorn out, but it's going to take a while. It's going to be a long, drawn out process. Next on the docket, that's right, that Emmy-winning actor Timothy Busfield had just a court appearance today to see if he can get a bond. So the attorneys for the actor and director Timothy Busfield have presented previously undisclosed audio recordings from initial police interviews with two of the child accusers, asserting the statements constitute a clear denial of the allegations of inappropriate touching leveled against Mr. Busfield.
And you know what's right and wrong, right? You know, where people can't touch, where people can't do. Yeah, you know that, right? Does Tim ever do that?
No, he's never touched me.
Never touched you?
Yeah.
Now, the recordings submitted to the New Mexico court on January 19th capture interviews conducted with the twin boys, identified in court documents as VL and SL, that dates back to November of 2024. Now, during the questioning, an officer explained concepts of personal boundaries and inquired whether anyone had touched their private areas inappropriately. Both boys reportedly responded negatively regarding Busfield, with one stating he had not touched those parts, and that the other affirming that Busfield had never touched him in that particular manner. Needless to say, Busfield's legal team described these responses as an unequivocal denial of the claims, which they argue undermine the prosecutor's case, which they certainly may. And I'm sure the prosecutor is going to be able to explain it. That's why I hate these cases so much. Anyway, prosecutors have obviously characterized the initial statements as a failure to disclose abuse at the time rather than the definitive proof of innocence. These allegations surfaced later in October of 2025 when the boy's mother reported to Child Protective Services that one child had disclosed to a therapist that Busfield had touched his genitalia and buttocks during an incident in a bedroom on the set of the Fox series The Cleaning Lady, where Busfield served as a director and executive producer. Now, Busfield, known for his roles in The West Wing, Field of Dreams, and 30-something, faces 2 counts of criminal sexual conduct with a minor and 1 count of child abuse. He surrendered to police on January 13th following an arrest warrant that was issued on January 9th. He has pled not guilty and he maintains his innocence. Now, in a separate motion filed by the prosecutors, they reference an additional uncharged allegation involving a then 16-year-old girl who claims that Busfield groped her several years ago during an audition at the B Street Theater in Sacramento, California, which Busfield co-founded. Now, according to the filings, the alleged victim's father, a therapist, initially agreed not to report the incidents after Busfield reportedly requested therapy instead. Busfield's attorneys have countered this claim by citing a witness who allegedly overheard the father making statements suggesting an intent to leverage the situation for professional gain. Now, the audio evidence about the boys was submitted in advance of the pretrial detention hearing scheduled for today, and the hearing obviously is intended to determine whether Busfield will remain in custody or whether he'll be able to be released and be able to return back home to New York, where he was when these charges came out. Like I said, he's being held currently without bond. Now, at the time of this filing, the motions hearing was still ongoing, the detention hearing. Melissa Gilbert, the wife, has shown up. The attorneys for Mr. Busfield have submitted a polygraph examination saying that he passed the polygraph. Polygraphs are completely inadmissible, but if you got one, you attach it to everything and you let the world know that he passed a polygraph examination. Not a big fan of polygraphs unless, of course, my client passes one. The attorneys also put out this initial interview tape where the kid said nothing happened. Doesn't mean that they can't be other disclosures down the way, which is what took place in this particular time period. And the court is going to be aware of that obviously times these types of outcries are delayed. And the kids will explain, I was scared. I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. I didn't do anything. It happens all the time. That comes down to a question of fact. Now, do I think that the judge should deny him bond in this particular case? Are you kidding me? No. Everybody's entitled to a bond unless, it's basically a capital offense normally. This is not. And he should be given a bond. It should be a high bond. And it should be obviously tailored so that it tailors the circumstances of this particular individual, Mr. Busfield. Like, should he be able to leave the state, turn in his passport, waive extradition, and be able to obviously have some sort of a pretrial supervision. That's what I see taking place. But I guess we'll find out maybe tomorrow whether Mr. Busfield is going home. And like I said, his wife, Melissa Gilbert, that one from Little House on the Prairie. Yeah, she is obviously there supporting him as well. Now, you can see what happens here. When somebody gets accused of a crime, there are lots of collateral consequences. In particular, in this case, Mr. Busfield, Amazon, MGM Studios has confirmed that Mr. Busfield's scenes in the completed romantic comedy, You Deserve Each Other, in which he portrays the father of a lead character, will be digitally removed using post-production techniques, and filming has concluded and reshoots are not planned. Additionally, Busfield's longstanding talent agency, Innovative Artists, has severed ties with him. Like I said, Busfield's wife, Melissa Gilbert, publicly expressed distress over the situation, describing it as a nightmare and voicing concerns for his safety while he is detained, obviously referring to her husband. Like I said, these are difficult proceedings, ladies and gentlemen. They really are, because they're so difficult. You want to assume that somebody is apparently of good standing would never do anything to young children. You'd like to think nobody, even if they're in bad standing, wouldn't do anything to kids. Then you want to believe the kids, but then okay, maybe there's some influences, right? We know that there's going to be allegations of motive to fabricate. They got fired from the job. They were angry. They were bitter. It hurt their career. They haven't worked since. All those types of things are going to come out. And those are the allegations that the defense is going to make to throw out there to raise reasonable doubt. These are tough cases. And it's ultimately what juries are there for, to decide who is telling the truth. Bottom line. And a jury won't be hearing more than likely about the girl from California with the dad who's a therapist. And they certainly won't be hearing about the polygraph examination. And they can't make their decision based upon evidence that they hear outside of the courtroom. Wouldn't want to be a jury on that case. Next on the docket, the Brad Simpson trial is continued. A Bexar County judge has granted a continuance in the murder trial of Brad Simpson, postponing proceedings by at least 60 days following a pretrial hearing held today. Now, prosecutors requested the delay to allow additional time for reviewing a substantial volume of newly received evidence that is accumulated beyond the initial discovery deadline established last fall. The Judge Joel Perez, presiding over the 437th Criminal District Court, approved the state's motion after discussions with the defense team. No new trial date has been set. Now, Brad Simpson of Olmos Park, Texas, faces charges in connection with the death of his wife, Suzanne Clark Simpson. The mother of four was last seen back on October 6th of 2024 at a social gathering at the Argyle in Alamo Heights. Brad Simpson reported her missing the following evening. Despite extensive searches involving multiple law enforcement agencies, her remains have never been recovered, and the case proceeds as a prosecution without a body. During the recent hearing, defense counsel sought personnel records of 3 officers involved in the investigation. The judge ordered the subpoena and in-camera review of those files to assess whether any relevant material must be disclosed to the defense. What that is involving is some sort of disciplinary action, usually involving truthfulness. So judge will get the personnel records, decides if it's anything of relevance. If it's not, the judge will say, you don't get to see him defense. If it does, obviously the defense will get it, and it is fair game, usually going to the credibility of the officer. Oftentimes officers get, they don't get fired, but they get kind of a bad little entry in their police record book with a little, asterisk under it saying, we're going to turn this over to the prosecution who has to turn over the defense if you have, lapses in integrity, i.e. you lied on something. We'll see where that goes. Now, additionally, prosecutors indicate that they may seek a future hearing to determine the admissibility of certain statements attributable to Suzanne Simpson. Now, defense attorney stated their intention to formally oppose such a request. Obviously, the defense is going to oppose that because they're saying their client is not guilty. Ms. Simpson's statements are not, obviously, she's not been produced for trial. And since he is entitled to the presumption of innocence, there's a confrontation clause issue. How can those statements come in if we cannot confront the person making those statements? It's going to be an interesting legal issue in the future. Anyway, Simpson was charged with the murder on November 7th of 2024 and indicted the following months. He has remained in custody since his arrest shortly after his wife's disappearance. And the case has got a lot of attention due to the circumstances, including prior reports of a dispute between the couple on the night that Suzanne was last seen. Remember, the neighbor said, yeah, I heard them yelling and screaming. And then they all went into the woods. One of those classic, two people went into the woods and only one came out. Anyway, these recent developments extend prior delays in the proceedings, which were originally slated to begin in February. That's right, a trial next month. Anyway, the court will address further scheduling and evidentiary matters at subsequent hearings. Next on the docket, Michigan woman going to prison for a long time for killing her son. Katie Austin Lee. She's 40 years old. Remember that, because it's going to make a difference when you think you're eligible for parole. Anyway, she's in Michigan in Ottawa County Circuit Court, and yesterday the judge imposed the sentence as stipulated in a prior plea agreement. Now, Lee had pled guilty back in October of last year to second-degree murder, torture, and resisting and obstructing a police officer in connection with the death of her son, Austin Dean Pickert. Now, the incident occurred back in February of 2025 at the Bay Points apartment there in Holland, Michigan. One day before the victim would have turned 18. Now, police reported that Lee administered a mind-altering substance or sedative to her son before fatally stabbing him, resulting in his throat being slashed. During the sentencing hearing, Lee delivered an emotional statement attributing her actions to a severe deterioration in her mental health. She described how, beginning in 2020, her condition worsened to the extent that she and her son rarely left their home. After years of isolation, she said she struggled to distinguish reality from delusion, influenced by constant exposure to alarming online content predicting societal collapse. Anyway, Lee recounted spending extended periods observing her surroundings suspiciously, including believing federal agents were monitoring her and inspecting household outlets for surveillance devices. She characterized her mental state at the time as profoundly impaired, stating simply, quote, "My brain was broken," end quote. Anyway, Lee became tearful while extending apologies to the prosecutors, defense attorneys, first responders who attended the scene, and her own family and friends. She acknowledged the lifelong consequences of her actions, noting that every day, thought, and memory without her son would serve as an ongoing punishment. She expressed regret and commitment to reflecting on alternative choices she might have made, though she conceded that such remorse would not suffice. Lee's defense attorney addressed the court, emphasizing lessons drawn from this case. He urged greater vigilance in supporting loved ones and prioritizing mental health care. The judge, in delivering a sentence, described the details of the offense as deeply disturbing and horrific. He characterized the acts as constituting pure evil and offered no leniency. Obviously, a lot of mental health challenges going on here, particularly for these isolated individuals, obviously led to a tragic outcome. Now, Lee's sentence, reflects the gravity of the crime. 70 to 90 years, that's a long time. When you're 40, you're never getting out. And to have a stipulated plea bargain to that effect, knowing that you're never getting out, I guess there's always hope that you'll be able to parole someday. But I always have troubles with cases like that, where a client wants to plead guilty and you say, okay, you plead guilty, you realize you're never getting out of prison. maybe there's a chance, right? Maybe there's a chance. Maybe your quality of life is a little better if you have an out date versus life without the possibility of parole. But at the end of the day, you're never getting out. Do you really want to do this? Or do you want to go to trial, see if there's some appellate issue that can be raised and may it go up on appeal or something to that effect? Those are tough situations. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And I've had, we did one just a couple of days ago. What was it? 24, 27 years, I think, on a homicide case. I mean, good result. Unless you're 50 something years old and you're going to get out until you're, 70 something. I hate those decisions, but it's not mine. It's not mine to ultimately say whether somebody should plead guilty or not. Tough choices to be made. Tough choices. Next, a North Carolina woman charged with poisoning people. Yeah, get a listen to this. So in Henderson County, there in North Carolina, the sheriff's office, violent crime unit, has formally charged 52-year-old, and this is her name, Gudrun, Gudrun, Linda Jean Casper Leinenkugel, like the beer, a Hendersonville resident and a former Asheville restaurant owner, with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 3 counts of distribution of prohibited food or beverages. The allegations connect her to the December 1st, 2025 death of 32-year-old Layla Jean Livis of Brevard and the attempted killing of Richard Evan Pegg and Mia, also reported as Maja Lacey, as well as the 2007 unsolved murder of Michael Schmidt in Henderson County. So the details of the allegation, what is going on there? So the arrest warrants specify that Casper Leinenkugel allegedly introduced acetonitril, acetonitrille. Apparently, it's a colorless, sweet-smelling industrial solvent used in pharmaceuticals, pesticides, and batteries. And she put it into beverages accessible to the victims during a family gathering in November of last year. Anyway, this drug metabolizes into cyanide in the human body, often causing delayed toxicity that complicates detection and treatment, according to the Center for Disease Control. Now, Layla Livis succumbed on December 1st, while Peggy and Lacey survived hospitalization. Notably, Livis and Lacey are identified as daughters from Casper Leinenkugel's prior marriage. And what about the cold case? Yeah, investigators' evidence uncovered during the recent probe linked Casper Leinenkugel to Schmidt's death, previously unresolved for 18 years. Warrants assert that killing of Livis and Schmidt occurred with malice aforethought. Anyway, Casper Leinenkugel resides at 15 Schmidt Terrace there in Hendersonville, sharing the surname of the 2007 victim. She was arrested on January 16th, denied pretrial release by a magistrate, and remains in custody at the Henderson County Detention Center without bond. Anyway, the sheriff there commended everybody and all their great efforts that they always do. And obviously, this investigation led to other evidence to go to the cold case as well to potentially resolve it. But hey, what can you say? Next on the docket, this day in legal history, January 20th, 1801. President John Adams appoints John Marshall as the 4th Chief Justice of the United States. Marshall served until 1835 and is widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in American jurisprudence. His tenure established key principles of judicial review, federal supremacy, and constitutional interpretation through the landmark decision of Marbury v. Madison in 1803. Also, on this date in 1937, January 20th, 1937, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in his second term, there was an amendment to the United States Constitution that shifted the inauguration date from March 4th to January 20th, formalizing the constitutional change to reduce the lame duck period and affecting governance transitions. That's right, it used to be in March. Why so long after the election? Well, people had to travel. Wasn't like you just jump on the plane and go do it. So there you go. Next on the docket, our quote of the day. Here it is from Justice George Sutherland in Carter v. Carter Coal Company. Quote, "Nothing is more certain than beneficent aims, however great or well directed, can never serve in lieu of constitutional power, end quote. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, that's really nice what you want to do, but if it's not in the Constitution, you can't do it. And then finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Now, in an incident that briefly turned a quiet Sunday morning in South Fargo into a scene reminiscent of a low-budget action flick, 62-year-old local resident Kevin Byziski now finds himself facing charges of terrorizing after allegedly deciding to play firearm charade with passerbys. Now, according to police received reports shortly after 11 a.m. on January 18th that a man was pointing a gun at a community member in the 2100 block of 17th Street. Officers responded, promptly establishing a perimeter around the area and safeguard the public and contain the situation. Obviously, a measure that proved effective without any dramatic escalations. After approximately 1 hour of careful containment, our hero was taken into custody without resistance and transported to the Cass County Jail. The charge of terrorizing stems from the allegations that his actions caused reasonable fear for personal safety among those targeted. You know, pointing a gun at somebody as they walk down the street probably would do that. Anyway, in the aftermath, investigators obtained an executed search warrant for the suspect's residence where they collected evidence pertinent to the case. The Fargo Police Captain Travis Mosier commented residents for their calm cooperation throughout the episode and praised the department personnel for upholding the force's standard principle of professionalism and guardianship. Now, while the episode concluded peacefully, it serves as a stark reminder that brandishing a firearm in public remains a decidedly poor method of engaging with one's neighbors. Our hero, booking photo from the Cass County Jail, is now part of the public record, capturing what one hopes is a momentary lapse rather than a new hobby. Yep, take a look at that photo, ladies and gentlemen. What could possibly have gone wrong? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.